So when considering an everyday watch, maybe that's not in Omega territory in terms of price or even Rolex, the list is pretty short. And for many, I would argue just holding out for the Rolex or Omega just simply as the best option. Yet of the infrequent players, there is one that answers the call of robustness with one of the most versatile case profiles around, with the Tudor Black Bay 36. A watch that I have been a fan of for some time, so let's jump in to the review. So the Tudor Black Bay 36 was first introduced at Baselworld 2016. It had a black dial variant, and then 2 years later, we saw the blue dial variant be introduced as well. That model specifically what I have here today. And although these watches have eventually just hit the market that I think they were created for, and there's been enough reception where I'd say that these watches have been a success, I think the watches themselves were of course overshadowed not just by Tudor alone and other watches, but just the Black Bay collection as well at those specific Baselworlds in which these watches were released. But now, as these watches have had time in the market, I think people are starting to appreciate what a great everyday watch option these watches are, and being unapologetically Tudor with its design. This particular model coming with a blue dial is my personal preference for one I would go for. I'll mention points later why I think that's the case. But before we jump into this, let's take a look at this watch at a glance. So the reference here, we're looking at the 79500. Case size of 36 millimeters, case thickness of 10.5 millimeters, lug to lug 44 millimeters, water resistance of 150 meters, movement is an automatic ETA 2824, lug width of 19 millimeters, crystal is sapphire, and a retail price of $2,900 with a Bob's Watches price of $2,195. And with this, I want to thank our partners at Bob's Watches, an amazing retail shop for pretty much any watch that you can think of, selling things from Oris, Omega, Tudor, Rolex, all the way up to Patek Philippe. And if you want to get an authentic, fairly priced watch, there's no better place than Bob's Watches. So hit that link in the description if you want to buy this watch or any other watch available. So to start us out here with this watch, let's discuss the unique aspects when compared to other Black Bay 36. And the main thing here is the dial, of course. As an owner of a Tudor Submariner blue dial, I have always been a fan of the way Tudor executes its blue dials in general. This one, of course, is very different than my 90s Tudor Sub, coming with a slight sunburst effect with this dial, but I think why I prefer these blue dials overall as a result of them offering more uniqueness compared to the black dial variations, as I find those struggling to express their own individuality compared to the Rolex models like the Oyster Perpetual or the 36mm Explorer. An idea that always is an elephant in the room when analyzing Tudor models, especially with these here. But when looking at this Tudor model, we have, of course, those differentiators, but also familiar attributes that are on display as well. Most notably, the snowflake hour hand in seconds hand, successful attempts to pay tribute to the popular vintage Tudor Submariners, and then later to become a bit of a less of a novelty here with the explosion of the Black Bay line. At the 12 o'clock, we have the Tudor shield above the writing of Tudor Genève. And Tudor does something pretty unique with their logos. They interchange a few different options depending on the models. So in this case, we see Tudor using the shield logo here. So a logo that was really on the watches throughout the 80s, 90s, and 2000s primarily. And then a Tudor rose on the crown, a watch that we see with a lot of their vintage models and also seen on some of the heritage Black Bay models. At the 6, we have the writing of rotor self-winding that matches the circular profile of the dial and its layout, and the use of superluminova filled hour markings. All when lit up with the 3 hands of this piece shine bright and in short, very legible, and is a fantastic watch that lights up in the dark. But when looking at this watch, the visual proportions of the dial all stem from the case of 36 millimeters, which yes, I know sounds obvious. However, one thing I noticed with this watch is that the snowflake hand and primarily the hour indices really occupy quite a bit of space on the dial. When contrasting this to the 41mm version and other Black Bays, I think this becomes even more noticeable. I know Tudor has really married themselves to the idea of using snowflake hands all the time, but to me, I think it's become a bit of a blind commitment at times, as this really has just become a staple of the Black Bay line, which I understand, but I'm not sure if they're just afraid to differentiate or change things. on what they perceive the idea or what they think the perceived idea of what a Black Bay watch should embody, or if they're just holding out for future releases. But one of the main criticisms for this model is I think a lollipop hand or a Mercedes hand would just work a little bit more ideally and would fit more nicely on this compact dial. This all considered though, it should not take away from the wearability of this watch overall, which I think is spectacular. 36 millimeters certainly is not a large watch, but 36 millimeters for Tudor or Rolex is much different than 36 millimeters for the rest of the watch industry. As this watch with its lug-to-lug of 44 millimeters will wear more to the standard of many 38 millimeter watches. When combining that with the fixed polished bezel and screw down and large crown, we have a nice mix of styling that lends to this being one of the best wearing contemporary watches I have come across, as it wears very similar to a lot of the 36 millimeter Datejust that you will find. So if you've ever worn one of those, you get a really good sense of what this will wear like as well. The watch is well contained in areas where it needs to be, like the thickness of 10.5 millimeters, and substantial in other areas. And despite it wearing well on my 6¼ inch wrist, I think it will be suitable for people maybe up to 7.5 inches with their wrist size. One important note before jumping onto the bracelet is the crown again. As with the lack of crown guards, it instead provides a black aluminum crown stem that does make the crown appear like it's not screwed in all the way, especially for those that might be unaware of this. As I know I got the question when posting on my Instagram, is the crown even screwed in all the way? Not my favorite feature about this watch, I think it does kind of cheapen the look and construction, but it is what it is. But from there we have to move on to the area I think with the greatest execution when it comes to this piece, and really just with the added heft of the piece itself, and that is the bracelet, which is certainly I think the most premium aspect of this watch. The bracelet is satin finished, screwed in links similar to that of Rolex models, and then features an impressively constructed clasp that is incredibly secure when locking into place with that locking Tudor shield stamped clasp mechanism. In addition, we have ceramic pins inserted within to help with ensuring slower deterioration of the locking mechanism itself. As you'll find with many older bracelets, especially from Rolex, they can easily get loose with adjusting, taking it off, putting it back on. So that will really lend to this aging better and not wearing over time and getting very loose. So no risk of the jingly jangly here. We also have a bracelet with 3 micro adjustment points for precise adjusting on the run with the use of a pointed end of a spring bar tool. So anybody that has a wrist that just swells up like mine, if I have any salt or anything like that in the summertime, this is incredibly useful. You only get 3, which is a little bit smaller than the standard that you'll get with a lot of Rolex bracelets, but still should be very useful if you get your bracelet fitting properly. And now the case back, nothing really worth mentioning here as it's closed and does not expose the ETA-based movement inside. And to be specific on this movement, we have a popular movement not only with the industry, but especially Tudor with a decorated ETA 2824, a movement that was commonly displayed in many Tudor watches until recently with the introduction of a new whole line of in-house calibers for the Black Bays, the North Flag, the Glamour, and other watches as well. However, this is yet to occupy these mid-sized Black Bays 36s here. The movement features a 38-hour power reserve, operates at 28,800 vibrations per hour or 4 Hertz, and just simply is a reliable movement that can, when regulated, achieve very solid accuracy. And of course, there's a little bit of a desire to want to have an in-house movement in these watches, but I think for where these watches fall, and also just the ease of being able to service ETA-based movements, and after owning some more complicated movements as well as some vintage movements as well, and vintage pieces, you start to appreciate the ease of having an ETA movement. They're robust, easy to work with for pretty much any watchmaker that you'll come across, and I think are not a bad choice, of course, for these watches. Now overall, despite the size of this watch, the Tudor Black Bay 36mm is really interesting. It wears larger than expected, and I see it as one of the best everyday watches for under $3,000 by far. Robustness, great bracelet, and specs to match its moniker as an everyday timepiece. So who is it for? Someone who perhaps is not interested in the status of Rolex, or does not quite like the design style of the Omegas out there, like maybe the Aquaterra series, and is looking for an everyday watch that walks that fine line between contemporary production and heritage styling and sizing. So guys, what do you think of the Tudor Black Bay 36? I think there's a lot to like about it. I don't think it's perfect, and I do think if you were somebody that likes Rolex or Omega, it's hard to rationalize getting one of these pieces in comparison. I think just holding out for maybe $1,000 or $2,000 more, you can start getting some pretty unique pieces with a little bit more character. But there's no question, these fit the bill as a great everyday watch, and I've liked them for quite some time. I like this blue dial variant, but I'd love to see comments down below. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to buy this watch, hit that link down below. Boz Watches has it available as recording this video, so check it out. I'll leave that link down there. And finally, if you want to take your watch to the next level, check out the watch straps we have available on TeddyBaldassarre.com. And then if you want to join our watch giveaway, fill out that watch giveaway form and then follow me on Instagram. So guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.